All right, we will call this agenda and priorities meeting to order for January the 6th. It's 3 p.m. and I'll ask Councillor Dunham to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
All right, thank you, Councillor Dunham. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? No? Could I please have someone please make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Messaros?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we will move into 3.1. I'll ask John Powell to please come and introduce our guest today.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and Happy New Year. So I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, my economic development colleague for the town of Olds, this is Sandra Blythe. She and I have been working closely together on a lot of various projects in the region in various months, but in particular she's come here now to talk to you about the BREWD program and to hopefully answer any questions I wasn't able to answer just before Christmas. So over to you, Sandra.
Okay, thank you, John. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here today. But more importantly, thank you for partnering on Phase 1 of the Next Generation Economy Initiative. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Anyways, this initiative, while it's an economic strategy that's for the region, for individual communities, it's really about collaboration as municipalities. And your willingness to step up and be a partner as part of this initiative is huge. By working together as communities and as a region, it just makes us more advantageous in that we can do things more effectively and efficiently just by simply sharing resources, sharing intel, and it just becomes more cost effective. And this initiative is a great example of that, of how we were able to pool our resources, which then allowed us to leverage more capital from federal and provincial government. So the centralalbertafirst.ca is the website where essentially you can get all the information on the strategy, Phase 1, Phase 2, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. But it is really the place where you can see who the partners are, who's involved and in what aspect. So right now we're looking at over 100 partners being part of this initiative, and it's growing every week. So 53 volunteers, I believe we have as of last week. There may be more now, but it's really a means to illustrate the power that we can have by working together. So I encourage you to definitely check out that website. And we also we started social media a couple months ago, and it's indicative of all the partners. So not one partner gets more play than anybody else. It's about a collaboration. So anyways, and these were the initial funding partners, including yourselves. So these were all the folks that came together around Phase 1 that put money into a pool, which then allowed us to leverage more dollars and move on the strategy. Now, I know I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to plug through these slides quite quickly. But at the end of the day, the broader strategy in itself is really about alliances and partnerships. Our ability to see one another not as rivals, but rather as partners, to be able to utilize each other as far as resources and all those things that I mentioned to prosper and add more value to our businesses. It's really about creating an entrepreneurship culture and innovation. to drive regional growth. So if we look at our industries from a broader region and then narrow down to the industries that are most important to us as communities, we're better able to meet their needs and as well create a competitive advantage for ourselves. As well, building on those advantages, how can we identify those things that make us more advantageous to other regions? And I use the example quite a bit through our information sessions, just through this partnership, understanding some of the infrastructure systems that you have here in Innisfail, which I didn't know before. So when we as Olds bid on those investment attraction opportunities, I would say in the past, well, the closest short line rail is probably Calgary, maybe Red Deer. No, there's a private company that owns a short line rail here. So now when I put in proposals, it's going to identify Innisfail as that short line rail. So that's one very small example of what is possible by working together and learning more about each other, and then figuring out how we can be more competitive by working together. And then lastly, the big area here is about effective governance, and it's working across jurisdictional boundaries. So what does that mean? Well, as you know, provincial government, federal government, different agencies identify central Alberta in different ways, right? The region evolves. From an industry perspective, they don't really care what our boundaries are. They want to do business where business happens. And so when we look at a boundary, while we started with one for this, which encompassed all of our partners, at the end of the day, once we start to identify the industries we're targeting and wanting to work with, those boundaries will be more elastic. Agriculture is huge. The boundary of who the agriculture industry is working with within our province is completely different from the construction industry, perhaps, that serves what we call Central Alberta. So overall, the broad-based strategy is to get us a little bit more in tune in what our advantages are and how we can promote one another and work together to capitalize on those. So, and a number of these slides would have been in the original document that you probably seen months ago when you decided to partner, but I'm a visual person, so this is it in a nutshell. So the Next Generation Economy Initiative is 2 phases. Phase 1 is BREWD. This is the phase that we're in right now. Next year, or 2026, we'll be looking at phase 2. So phase 1 is looking at our economic environment and whether or not it's healthy. Phase 2 is about looking at our driving industries to grow the economy. So those are 2 critical pieces in creating economic growth. So BREWD looks at a business retention expansion strategy along with a workforce development strategy. Phase 2 will look at an industry cluster competitiveness strategy. So I'm not going to get into phase 2. We're going to focus specifically on BREWD right now. So how do we assess the environment, which I call the inputs, what we as an economy put in? Essentially, these are the 8 critical areas that make up an economy. And these are defined in different ways, but ultimately, these are them. And what we want to be able to do is look at, for example, do our industries have access to capital? Are they able to easily get that information or find dollars? If not, why not? Where are they getting capital? Do we have available property for industry when they're coming in and they're looking for buildings? Anyway, workforce skills and competency, those are critical when bringing in industries to our region. Can we meet those skills? So what we want to identify within this area is, do we have the capacity to meet the needs of our industries? Do we have the competency, meaning how specialized are we in our capabilities? Meaning, are there companies here that can serve their needs? And how responsive are we to changing and evolving needs of our industries? At the end of the day, if we have a healthy environment, it organically and naturally attracts investment. If the environment is not healthy, business can't expand and business doesn't want to stay here. We have to identify where we're strong and healthy and where we're not and what we have to fix. So, business retention and expansion. This isn't anything new. This has been around for over 40 years. What we're doing has been done on the international scale for many years. So I guess I should have introduced myself. I spent 23 years with my own 2 consulting companies. My job was, or my business rather, was largely working with governments of all sizes. My main client was provincial governments, so my background is economic strategy development. So it's creating growth economies for governments. So this is a model I have used for 25 years and hold international awards for implementing this in an effective way. But at the end of the day, business retention expansion is about the growth of our local businesses. If you don't have business that's growing, you're going to have a starving economy. And the WD part of BREWD means workforce development. So here's where some of the efficiencies come in. If we're going out to talk to businesses across the region, makes good sense to do a workforce development strategy at the same time. We're talking to them anyway. So by the end of this, we will have somewhere between 50 to 60 employers that will be surveyed and will provide information to our consultants on what's working for them, what's not working for them, and the skill sets that they're looking for. So why BREWD? So business retention expansion is really critical to an economy. At the end of the day, we have many governments that try to go after investment attraction. And the problem with investment attraction is about all the investors that walk in your door, if you nail 2% of those, you're lucky. It's a very costly game to be a part of, right? But the retention of your local businesses makes good sense. They've already invested in our communities. 70 to 80% of new jobs come from our existing businesses. And in turn, 100% of jobs that are lost in our community are lost from our existing businesses. At the end of the day, it's about identifying what our businesses need and creating a plan to address those needs and ensure that they can grow and expand. So that's ultimately what we're going to be doing here. So as I said, it's about creating a more competitive business environment, a business where industry can have the economic support system that they need to grow and succeed. So this broad-based survey and information that we're gathering is quite extensive. The information that we're going to be garnering is asking business, what do you see as problems in our environment and where do you see benefits? And then at the end of it all, we compile that strategy and see where we're doing good and not doing good. So I'm going to hop past these slides because you guys have seen this already. But at the end of the day, the objective is enhanced cooperation and consensus among business, government, and economic development organizations. So here is the process that we're following within this strategy, business retention expansion. So where we're at right now is step number 2, surveying the business community. That's going to happen on January 23rd. And I'm hoping all of you and all of the councils of our partners will be at that event. That will give you an opportunity to actually see those volunteers and those local businesses that have stepped up to help us move this strategy forward. At the end of the day, as governments, we can't do this by ourselves. Business needs to be a part of this. And so this strategy I've worked on over many years, and at the end of the day, business needs to be at the table. They need to be the ones that tell us what's not working and what is working. And when you look at other economies around the world that do this and do it very well, industry is driving the economic agenda, and they are largely funding it. So it puts government in more of a position where you are funding actual initiatives and priorities that will benefit your communities as a whole, and business invests in areas that make the most sense for business. And that will come clear later on. But at the end of the day, surveying the business community is on the 23rd. Thursday, we kick off the training sessions with the volunteers. And so we're having one in Olds, then Innisfail, Nehill County, and Red Deer. So we get them all trained up about what's involved to contact 10 businesses, and then on the 23rd, we hit the streets and we get business engaged. And those are the rest of the steps. Once all the data is collected, then it means bringing people together around the priority areas that are identified, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, we want to do economic growth forum once everything is done. That would be hosted in June, and that's where we launch the action plan and what's going to happen across the region. So ultimately, we put together 4 teams. Leadership team, they're already in place. Workforce development team, also in place. Business visitation team is also largely in place with 53 volunteers. And there may be more as we come together. The task force team is not formulated. They're the strategizers. It's once we identify the areas that we have to tackle, that's when we look out to identify the experts that can actually advise us in those critical areas. And that's the formation of the task force team. So next steps, business visitation team, as I say, all of that has been mobilized. Volunteer training starts on Thursday. We're engaging sponsors as well to support and incentivize business. And it all launches January 23rd. Okay, so how to join this movement, and that's really what it is. It's a movement for business. People can volunteer, people can become sponsors, but at the end of the day, it's all about taking the survey. And I didn't touch much into that, but the BREWD survey is quite extensive. It's no joke. It can take you anywhere from 20 to 30 or more minutes to complete it, depending how you answer it. And so people say, that's too long, Sandra. It's like, nobody's going to do that survey. I've been told this for 25 years, but that's why we use the volunteers, and that's why we target business, because business has a vested interest in being a part of this, because what they tell us dictates what my office, John's going to be doing over the coming years, right? And this is an opportunity for them to direct those resources. So yeah, so it's a real thing, but the idea is that we are implementing not a one-time deal where let's just get an economic plan. And I'm very frank about this. I've worked in and out of government for 25 years. Economic strategies get built, some of the projects may get implemented, and then new council comes in and goes, we got a better plan. And then all that work gets moved, and the reality is environment largely doesn't change, right? So it's creating a long-term way that we can all work together and collect valuable data that we can actually hang our hats on. That's fact-based, specifically from business. So volunteers are asked to ultimately put up about 8 hours in total, 1 hour to attend the training session, 2 hours to attend the launch survey, or the launch event on the 23rd, 3 hours to conduct their face-to-face visits with 10 businesses, and 45 minutes upwardly to take the survey themselves. We market them. We've been doing reels and promoting our volunteers since they signed up back in November. So it's a whole means to promote them and celebrate them, and that's what the January 23rd event is about. So this is also a great opportunity for councillors to be a part of this, because then you get to go knock on those doors and like I say, this is what you get for your business license, right? You get all of these free services, and I haven't even gotten into, and I won't get into the Regional Business Support Network, which is another free service that has come by way of this that has really had a great uptake by businesses across the region. Okay, and here's some of the folks that decided to join the movement, some of our volunteers. Yeah, and so this is a campaign that we're going to be doing throughout the month of February to show the businesses that have joined the movement, and then it will be up to them to challenge other businesses to also join the movement. And they post that on social media, and then in turn, we promote their business. Questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Sandra. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Bates.
I didn't even hit my button yet. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to attend the session at the library. But just now, as I listened, you mentioned industries in your slide on economic foundation with the spokes and the various things. And then, of course, we moved to business retention. How do the two work together, industries and business, and in this umbrella? And of your volunteers, are any of them industry? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, so many different industries are participating in this already as volunteers. Largely retail industry is who's largely represented right now. But we do want to be able to see that extend out to other broader industries. We're also in the process of forming an ag committee because what we do know is agriculture is one of our biggest driving industries in the region, and it just makes good sense to start there to help build that. But from an environment perspective, which I think is what you're asking, the environment impacts all types of businesses, right? Whether it's the infrastructure, roads, power, water, or quality of life, attracting workers to the region. If the quality of life is not seen as valuable by our employers and their ability to be able to attract workers, that's a problem. We want to know what those issues are and try and fix them. So for phase 2, we are looking at right now, I have a consultant who is compiling information on our driving industries to confirm that agriculture is one of our main leading industries. And so we can see what the size of those industries are going into phase 2. So I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly.
Maybe if I rephrased,
Yeah.
of the 53 volunteers that you currently have, are any of them non-retail industries?
Yes, yes. And if you go to Central Alberta First, to the website, they're all listed.
Okay.
You can see all the names. So the banks are there, retail is there, we have manufacturing involved. I can't remember all the different types of industries, but you can see the names of the companies actually on the website.
Okay, and subsequent question, then I'll clear the deck. How many of your volunteers so far, would you say are from Innisfail?
Yeah, so right now I believe we have 8 volunteers. I haven't checked.
Might have gone up since I've been away for the last couple
Yeah,
of weeks. So.
yeah. So when I checked last week, we were at 8.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think I mentioned this when John originally gave us a snapshot before the holiday season. My question was, is there a need or a want to include the not-for-profit sector with this initiative? That's my first question. And the other one is, because I always think these initiatives are excellent, depends on who's leading council and things change administratively. This is all positive work. My question to you guys is, you got 53 people already engaged, and you get people that will drop off and jump on, and that. How do you keep that momentum going? Especially like you mentioned, 25 years in your industry. Is how do both of you see keeping that momentum going, especially in this region? Because it seems like there's a lot of industries and small businesses that, it's the same people,
Yeah,
right? And so
right.
how do you mobilize those leaders to be the catalyst to this new program? That's my question. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So once we get the strategy, sort of the data from that strategy in, it's then that we start to engage those experts, right? But at this stage of the game, like I tell everybody, the industries that are the ones that mostly participate will drive the economic agenda. So if it's largely retail, that's where we're focusing. And you don't get another kick at the can for another 3 years. So as we're rolling out the survey, we're actually reporting on what industries leading the charge, right? So construction and so forth, no, we got to get some folks engaged in this so we have a say in this plan. So momentum is once we get the strategy done and we start to see the overarching themes of the things that we have to solve or chase, we bring the right people into the room. We engage industry and business in those discussions. Eventually, once we get past phase 2, it becomes a little bit more clear about what those industries specifically want. So ag being one. Yes.
John, what do you think? Do you think I'm out to lunch when I ask that not-for-profit side of things, or is it just the flavor that I'm pitching to you guys?
We can include them.
Oh, yes.
Because I think that it's like in our community, and I think of Innisfail itself, or I know Olds, they do a lot of good work, right? And they work closely with those small businesses, and I see that they don't get the credit or the recognition on a day-to-day basis because they're not the industry. They don't bring in 50 people, or they hire 3 to 4, but you could have 10 agencies within a small community that actually really punch above their weight. And that's where I find that, in just the work that I've done over the years, not-for-profit they're missed out at times. And that's why I keep on pushing that, or just mentioning that. And, I hope that there's success here for sure. And I think that being a positive influence, as an elected leader, I think that's where my focus, or that focus needs to be. So I'm done with asking questions. Mayor Barclay, thanks.
Mayor Barclay, may I respond to that? I wasn't able to give you a definitive response to that question before Christmas, but I've just got the nod, and absolutely 100% not-for-profits can participate and will be included in the outcomes should they participate.
Because they're all part of the environment, right?
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Thank you for your presentation. Just through the chair, through Mayor Barclay, first of all, a couple of questions just about numbers. Just was taking notes. Just want to make sure I've got my notes correct. So 150 volunteers going out to talk to 10 businesses each. So you're anticipating they will speak to about 1,500 businesses?
So not 150 volunteers. That was our target, was to
Okay.
get 150. We're at 53. And so we're now engaging some of the committees that are also involved in the partnership to also assist. So I'm hoping we'll be at 60 some by the end of it.
60 businesses?
Volunteers.
60 volunteers,
Right.
okay. And so I think at one point you said you thought 50 to 60 employers will complete the survey?
Correct.
Okay, so that's sort of your target?
Yes.
60 in the region?
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the pieces of information you wanted, or couple of pieces of information you said that you wanted to get, it was about, are you able to access capital? And is there property availability for your sector? So would you anticipate wanting or trying to figure out how to get survey completions from companies that are not established? That seems like something, those types of respondents would be able to answer that type of question. That might not be an answer you have. That's just something that crossed my mind. I'm wondering about the workforce team, so the advisors who advise on current and future workforce needs, changes, and challenges. Will these advisors, are they going to be advising on the data that you collect? So it'll be the data that gets collected, and then these will be the people who are reporting on the data? Or is this a different group of people?
Yeah, so there's two committees right now to your first question
Yeah.
regarding accessing capital.
Okay.
So there are some questions in the survey that are actually asking business where they got the funding for their venture. And then they have options, right? Was it financial institutions? Was it angel investors and what have you? To identify where are our businesses getting capital? Are they going to the banks? So right now, we have all the major banks that sit on the Access to Capital team. They had a say in the survey and what would be asked in that. So we're trying to understand where are people accessing capital. So that's that team and the questions and how we'll garner that information. The workforce development team has been in place, since last year, I'd say. Our first meeting was probably early fall, I think. Anyway, so the workforce development team is represented by service agencies that serve workforce development. So they have a very good, wholesome understanding of workforce needs in our region. So it's a number of different organizations. I think there's 13 people represented on that team. So once the workforce development data specifically is compiled from those employers, the workforce development team will sit around and go through that information and start to identify some of the priorities that need to be moved on and suggest ways perhaps of addressing some of those needs.
All right, so thank you for that. And then the outcome, so you provided some good context around some of maybe the unspoken outcomes and objectives. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, I might have to come back to finish what I was, where I was going. Okay, sorry about that. Okay,
That's
thank
okay.
you for your time.
That's all
Thanks.
right.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Sandra, are we going to be able to see the survey
Oh, yes. Yeah, so.
soon or not at the training or?
Yeah, so we've spent the last number of months running that survey past all the people that are involved on the committees. And so it's going live on January 23rd. And I should also mention that that website is going to be the housing or clearinghouse for all of the information. Everything is going to be transparent. All the reports, data, everything that comes out of this will be on that website.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Messaros?
Thank you. Sorry, I'll give this another try. So when you're talking about what you're going to produce out of the data, and so what the companies get from the strategy, or you're going to come up with strategies based on the data, what would an example of something like that look like? That,
Yeah.
so if I'm like the retail store in town and I've answered the survey, and then you come up with your list of actions, what would something look like for me in the end?
Yeah. So what happens is when the consultants go through all of the data, things start to pop up, like those overarching themes that keeps coming up again and again. So an example, maybe I'll use, let's say, utilities as an example. It may keep coming up by business. The cost of power in our region is way too much. Or it may come forward the cost of water. I don't know. Hypothetically, I'm throwing things out. If that issue continues to come up across all the surveys, that becomes a target area that when we bring the research people together to talk about this and review the data, the consultant's going to say that came up numerous times and we selected that as a priority area that we need to look at and address. And then we talk about that. Does that answer your question?
Kind of.
As an
So is that
example?
what you're calling that would be an item on your action plan?
Yes.
Okay.
So once we know what the issues are, then we bring people together and go, okay, here's all these overarching themes, and there's about 20 initiatives in here. It's time to prioritize. And that's why we have to do this as a region, because I can't move on this stuff by myself, even just for the community of Olds, nor can John. You may have 3 things that the community of Olds wants to move on for your community specifically. He's going to need help in doing that, right? And engaging the right people to help assist with that. So there's 2 things. There's going to be the regional strategy, and then there's going to be your community plan that shows how you're different from the region.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot, I know. It's
Okay, thank you. I'm sure waves of questions will continue coming. Thanks.
No, thanks, Sandra. And just so, you know, I think Innisfail, we've done a lot of great work here with our Power of Place strategy, and, you know, we have been doing business visits and collecting data, and we've seen a lot of great economic development the last 3 or 4 years, and so I don't think we're strangers to any of this work, and I'm curious how, like, are you connecting in with, or aware, I guess, of things that are going on? So let's talk about water, wastewater. Well, in November, there was a water, wastewater forum that was hosted by Minister Dreeshen up in Edmonton, and all the water commissions and wastewater commissions in the province were invited to that, because they're looking at, there are such huge discrepancies in the price of water. And of course, wastewater, as you know, we're on a regional line, and so that impacts what we charge as well. And so there's a lot of work that's just getting off the ground in that area. And, you know, certainly power, there's been lots of discussion around that, not so much the rates, but transmission distribution. There seems to be some movement on that right now. I'm also curious about business attraction. So if you have a community like Innisfail that may have a business that would like to have a regional initiative located here, will BREWD be interested in supporting that? And I would, talking specifically about waste to energy. So Varma, we've had that on our plate for about 3 years now. We've had 3 other communities that have signed letters of intent, but there hasn't been any buy-in from the rest of the region. So I think regional collaboration, it's very easy to use that term, but it's really hard to do, right? And when you can't even get in the door to talk to the people you need to talk to about an opportunity for a regional project here, how does that get solved?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a good word.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we need a plan that, my background in this is, if you're ever going to get this thing off the ground, you got to build trust first. Trust doesn't happen through video conference meetings. It comes from getting in a room together and being frank and honest about what our issues are and being willing to change them. That's the reality. So that's where we're at. And I was not aware about the wastewater thing, but that is why folks like yourself that are involved in these various committees, and all of you, right? I can't sit on all the committees, nor can John, nor can any of us have a wholesome understanding of those things. But if we get folks like yourselves in that room, when the data comes in, you can bring up these things and say, this is where this is at, this committee is moving on this already. So maybe this doesn't need to be a priority now, or maybe the priority needs to be for this regional strategy, support and help lobby that initiative, right? So yeah, it's working together, and 110%, I agree. Collaboration's a good word.
Yeah, I think from the
We have
water-
to implement.
I think from the water wastewater meeting that was in Edmonton, I think there was rates that went from, I don't know, like $1 for a cubic meter of water to, you know, $4 that
Yeah.
in the room, right? Depending on what part of Alberta people were in. And of course, we know the regional wastewater system, you know, does that put us at a disadvantage? Potentially, and yet it's kind of nice not to have those lagoons in town at the same time. So a lot of discussion is going on in that area right now, and which is really important, of course. And yeah. So thank you for the presentation. We kept you way longer than 10 minutes. So and thanks, John, of course, as always. So we will see you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day and Happy New Year. All right, we will move into 4.1 with Director Jenkins and the Public Art and Placemaking Framework.
All right, thank you, Mayor Barclay. So today we have sort of the first look for council at the draft Public Art and Placemaking Framework. And as council's aware, we've been talking about public art and ways to establish appropriate plans and policies for a number of years. So in early 2024, we engaged the services of Evoke Culture. Annalie Adair has met with council a few times, as well as the community, to develop a public art framework for Innisfail to help really bring together what we're trying to achieve with respect to public art and how we could manage that in a sustainable way for a community our size. So the draft is included for council. I'm just going to walk through a bit of it and go from there. So it does identify sort of high-level vision, guiding principles, and a policy statement. So the vision being to create a town where public art and placemaking inspire creativity, inclusivity, and sustainability while celebrating Innisfail's cultural heritage. With a policy statement that public art and placemaking initiatives in Innisfail reflect a commitment to inclusivity, environmental stewardship, and the celebration of local culture. By fostering collaboration among residents, businesses, and artists, the town will build lasting, vibrant spaces that enhance quality of life. So kind of going back, I guess, through the process, we did have a number of public engagement sessions. The first ones back in June, and then followed by sessions in October where basically the highlights that came out of those earlier sessions were sort of reestablished and worked through both with the public as well as internally. So that was a good part of the process in terms of grounding some of the ideas in what we're currently doing, as well as what we have capacity for and how public art, and you'll notice the title now, Public Art and Placemaking, kind of encompasses all of those things, that it's not necessarily just murals, it's everything from landscaping to, you know, lighting and gathering spaces throughout the community. And that's really something that that bridges multiple departments, whether that's, you know, Parks and Rec, our facilities, you know, sidewalks, all of those things. So being able to bring together those departments to talk about ways in which we embrace public art and placemaking in ways that may not specifically be thought of that way. So everything from our Christmas light decorations, things like that. So so the plan goes on to establish 5 priority strategy areas, as well as a detailed implementation plan and timeline. In addition to the framework, the document includes a terms of reference for the recommended advisory committee, example RFPs and RFQs for call for artist projects, as well as priority site types and inspiration, as well as sort of overview of competencies for a potential staff person that we would be looking for to support some of this work. So at this point, the draft plan, after today, we'll be making available for public feedback over the next couple of months, and then coming back to council for final approval, probably later in the spring. In terms of financial impacts, when we do come back, so the framework identifies a year one budget of $20,000. Council will recall we did take that amount out of during budget deliberations back in November. So that would be a consideration to council as to whether we want to look at the adoption of this plan and that coming up with that budget amount. In addition, as the plan talks about, the requirement for sort of a part-time coordinator role or some sort of administrative support that would be focused on the implementation of the plan, the coordination of a committee, the coordination of projects, and things moving forward. So in terms of that public engagement over the next couple of months, we will make the document available through our website. And we're also looking, we have access to a new platform, online platform. Some of the councillors may recall when we did the Dodds Lake Recreation, we utilized an interactive online platform that allows more than surveys. You can have comments, you can have videos, you can have different ways to help people engage and provide comments. So we're looking to start utilizing that on various projects, and this will be one of the first ones that we can use that. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Director Jenkins. I was really, really impressed with the draft, seeing how granular it got, and you know, originally just thinking of it as public art with the placemaking aspect to taking into consideration potentially the corner on 50th, you know, all those spaces. I think this has gone so much further than what my expectations of it were. I think once we get the community feedback, it will lay a really good foundation, and hopefully we will be able to bring this to fruition within the year, which would be brilliant. Obviously, we, as you mentioned, we did take the $20,000 out. What do you see as roadblocks to actually being adopted and actually happening? Do you see, like with finding people for the committee, is it a financial, what do you see as roadblocks for it actually happening?
I think that the commitment to creating the resource, and we've sort of identified if it's a part-time role that's in that two days a week kind of a thing, that this is their focus, that someone is going to be proactive in ensuring that the actions and the things that are laid out are achieved, that committee that does get brought forward is engaged and is utilized in the way it's intended to. I think that's the biggest challenge, is that we're going to adopt this and it's going to be fantastic, and that's the last we'll ever hear of it. So I think that sustainability and commitment, and if there is an individual that's their focus, this is what they were sort of brought on to implement, I think that'll be a major positive to drive it forward.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and through to Director Jenkins. I too was really impressed with this report. I mean, after participating with the big session, you know, like when we kind of went through that timeline of what all has happened in the town since the town was born, basically, and all of the memories, seeing the multi-generational component of this report was really encouraging for me. This is a report that really focuses on people of all ages and stages and whatever, of being able to work together, and that was just very appealing. I think that, you know, I absolutely would have asked the question that Councillor Dunham did as well, and your answer is bang on. But I think when we talk about from that municipal planning perspective, I think that the town is doing a good job of this. I think weaving it into the work that all departments do, so everything relative to, you know, economic development and business attraction and community design and community development. You know, if we're always aware and always conscious of what that looks like, then I think the last thing we want is for this to become one of those vinyl trophies on the bookshelf. We want this to become a living piece of action, but that's just like safety, that's kind of the way we do it, right? Is it just becomes a part of the air that we breathe. And so, yeah, I appreciate it. I thought it was really well done. Thank you.
I was also very happy with the report. That's not always the case when you get the first draft. And I think the consultant did a really good job of keeping the size of the community. And, you know, yes, we aren't Calgary or even Red Deer or someone that can have, you know, this entire department focused on art, but finding ways to still celebrate that in the community.
Yeah, the examples that they gave us in the appendix were all very, yeah, you know, you could focus on them and look at, yeah, well, that would work here. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Heistad?
Thanks, Your Worship. Director Jenkins and my fellow councillors, you know, really laid it out really well. I think this is a great report. I think the movement, we're not going too fast with this. We're taking our time and setting up administration and future councils with a good plan in place. My question to you, Director Jenkins, is how long would we have that up on our site for people to give feedback? Would it be 3 months or 2 months? Because how I'm looking as give enough time but not leave it there where there's no interaction. That's my concern with that. But overall, I thought this was excellent. And, you know, Councillor Wing mentioned the business retraction and bringing people in. I think a lot of this work is going to be very important for the future. So thanks.
Yeah, my anticipation, if we're able to get it up, that it would be, you know, 6 weeks to 2 months, sort of, that we, like you say, you leave things up too long and people, you know, they either fill it out in the first 2 days or they fill it out in the last 3 days when you remind them that it's going to close, right? So it isn't always good just to leave it. And then that'll still give council some time when other financial decisions come up this spring, if there's an appetite to move forward this year.
Any more questions? Councillor Bates?
More of a comment. I appreciate the movement and the report. One of the things that concerned me a bit was when we had the follow-up video conference with the consultant. I was on the second one, and other than staff and council, it seemed like we had one or two. And when I asked the consultant how many she'd had the day before, she said she had 2. So the carryover from the in-house meeting to that video conference had a lot of casualties in the continuity. I just make that as a comment.
I think the one, and we had this conversation this morning when we were just chatting, there's maybe fewer people who consider themselves artists and who are going to directly participate, whether it's as a committee member, but a lot of people that appreciate it, right? They want the art, they want the nice streets, they want the places, whether they always are going to participate in those direct events. Also, why we're kind of moving towards even this social pinpoint is the platform online that does allow people to interact asynchronously, is that the right term? That they don't have to show up at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. They can go in and engage with the materials as they so choose. Because I believe I may have been on my way home from Costco listening to the one when you were on. At the so trying to find those times that work for people to be able to participate.
That's a good point, Director Jenkins. That worked very well for the Dodds Lake project, and you know, it's a great report. I would say there's even some things in the report that are already underway in the community and have been done. And so building upon those as we go, and it's not like we're starting from scratch. And I look at even the work that Fuse Consulting did, you know, with the signage around Napoleon Lake. I mean, part of that work has already started to develop out, and I know they were looking at Dodds Lake as well, and talk a little bit more about that in Roundtable. But it's good. I mean, of course, my only concern is the funding, right? And we've been through difficult budget and took some money out, and now are we going to put more back in? And how do we do that? And I don't know, we're in pretty uncertain times right now in many ways, and I guess we'll look for Director Jenkins for that, and Director Vickers going forward for some advice in that area. But anyway, it is a good report that she has put together, and I think captured things extremely well. So I'll just have somebody please make a motion. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I would move that council accept the report and information and direct administration to solicit community feedback on the document prior to final approval at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm also just going to add Director Jenkins. I'm really curious about school involvement and youth involvement, and wondering if, you know, hooking into like art teachers, for an example, at the schools to kind of make that happen. I think that is so important and be a lot of fun. So anyway, we do have a motion. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. And we'll move into correspondence and information. Sad to see the Innisfail Flyers U18 didn't get the outcome they were hoping for, but I guess I'll just put it out there if there's anything that maybe the town of Innisfail can do to support that going forward. Don't be shy about reaching out and asking. So I'll just have a, and the Parkland Foundation Seniors Housing Requisition. So if we just scroll down to that. So question for, well, I guess I'll ask Councillor Dunham, since he's our guy. So that has increased like 80% since 2022, so, or 21. So obviously expenses have increased, and I'm wondering what else has impacted this, like just the fact that expenses have, like I see a rise of 20%. And
Yes, Mayor Barclay. A few different things, increases in costs, and one of the biggest factors is that they want to build some funds for future, because there really is no safety net for them at this point in time. So that was the biggest thing, and as I'd mentioned in the previous meeting, is what the Bethany group had come to us and originally asked for. This is substantially less, because they'd wanted quite a bit more money, but we just, all of us knew that with everything going on, we couldn't come back to council and say that we'd approved the budget that they'd originally wanted. So, but yeah, those are the two main points.
okay, thanks. And just to put you on the spot one more time, so has there been any more discussion about potentially building out on the land, the Autumn Grove land?
There has, but at this point in time, I'm not able to.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Yeah, in
Okay.
the near future, we
Yep.
have our next meeting, I believe, at the end of the month, but there definitely has, and
No, good
a
enough.
lot of that's back in Bethany
Yes,
right now, and then
okay.
coming back to us, so.
No, thank you so much for that. Okay, any questions about any other correspondence? Just have somebody please make a motion to accept the correspondence as information. Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barclay will make that motion.
Perfect, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll go to upcoming events. And I'll just have somebody please make a motion that we accept this as information. Councillor Heistad?
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. I'll make the motion to pass this or put this forward.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, perfect, thank you. And we'll begin roundtable discussion with Councillor Wing today.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just two things. Since I've been appointed to the RDR Mug Group, one of the just very short pieces of work that I was involved in doing was a review of their bylaws. So RDR MUG over the years has amended pieces of their bylaws, but they've actually never actually consolidated all of the amendments, and so there was a need to get busy and do a solid review, and that the revised version will go to the AGM later on this month. Just of note, the organization had, although it had an executive committee noted in its bylaws, they actually hadn't been working with an executive committee for quite some time. So the bylaws have been amended to just simply reflect that there is a membership of the organization and that there are officers of the organization. There will no longer be an actual executive committee. The board or the membership will have the opportunity through their bylaws to appoint ad hoc committees with terms of reference and that kind of thing moving forward, but they just felt that there wasn't a need to have an executive committee who would have a meeting and then repeat it all at a board meeting in the future. And the town of Drumheller, municipality of Drumheller remains as their financial operations center. So that is one piece of work that's been done. And then I did attend the webinar regarding the changes to policing legislation on December the 18th. That's it.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. None of the, committees that I sit on actually met in the previous 3 weeks, so I will be submitting a report next week, but it'll mostly just be on public events that I attended.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Bates.
Yeah, nothing really to report all the way back into December, except I enjoyed my birthday in Phoenix. The police and fire game was extremely interesting on Friday night, and it's good to see that rivalry continue. This week, I think MPC's canceled, and I believe there's an MDP meeting tomorrow.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Messaros.
Same with me, nothing much to report. Happy New Year to everyone, and happy to see you, and I'll have my report in next week.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Heistad.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I was in and out at the hockey game, which is always interesting to see that battle. And I have a historical village meeting this week. It's on the Wednesday. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So not a whole lot here either. I did attend the same police webinar that Councillor Wing did. We don't need to have a regional policing committee. We can just stick with what we have. I think CEO Becker will talk more about that when he's back. And I think just a letter needs to be sent in to the ministry to say that we already have one that's working. So that was kind of good. A couple things. I'm going to bring forward a couple of motions next week regarding Alberta Council and Clay Dyer. I was listening to a presentation of his a few months ago on funding for groups to put on events and festivals and other things. I think it fits well even with the public art policy, and would like to see him come and do a presentation either online or in the community to our groups, and you know, maybe have a little more collaboration amongst all the groups, and see what kind of funding could be pulled out of that. They typically need to be more than a day, so there's lots of events that do happen on more than one day. And then the Fuse Consulting too. I know there was some information in that report we got regarding self-guided educational programs for schools, and would like to dig into that a little bit deeper. So anyway, next week we will do that, but was at the big game the other night, so congratulations to Fire. Mr. Leith is smiling out there, Manager Leith, Coach of the Year. Yeah. And that's about all I have. So we'll now make a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make the motion that we move in camera.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried.